Hi, finance folk. My name is Aidas Palubinskas, and I am your host. The EU has over 40 sanctions regimes globally to prevent conflict or respond to current or emerging crises. The growing use of sanctions can make the activities of small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, more complex. To manage this complexity, the European Commission has recently launched the EU Sanctions Helpdesk. Today, I'm joined by Frederik von Essen, legal and compliance key expert, and Dimitrios Chaidas, key expert on communications, who will discuss the help desk and the added value it brings to European SMEs. This is a special episode, as it is the new episode of our EU Finance podcast series, but also it's the first episode of the new Compliance Corner podcast series of the EU Sanctions Helpdesk. Greetings and salutations, Frederik and Dimitrios. Welcome to the podcast. Let's jump right in. Dimitrios, simple, straightforward question. What is the EU Sanctions Helpdesk?
The Helpdesk is a new initiative funded by the EU, and it's implemented on behalf of the European Commission by an external service provider. The EU Sanctions Helpdesk has three objectives. The first is to streamline due diligence processes. We offer practical guidance to SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, to support their due diligence and compliance processes, reduce inter-sanction costs when dealing with countries that are subject to EU sanctions. The second objective is to combat overcompliance. We know that European SMEs might avoid some legitimate business opportunities because of the uncertainty that might exist regarding the legality of these opportunities. So this is where we come in, and our solutions help address this issue, ensuring continued trade that aligns with EU common foreign and security policy. The third objective that we have is to build confidence for financial partners. This means that we aim to reassure financial institutions that SMEs that have used the help desk have conducted proper due diligence for transactions in countries that are targeted by EU sanctions. Overall, I would say that the EU Sanctions Helpdesk offers a range of services. All of these services are hosted on the EU Helpdesk website that is now live, and we invite all SMEs to come and visit. We provide with a one-stop shop for sanctions compliance, covering all UN and autonomous EU restrictive measures.
Okay, you said one-stop shop. So my next question is obvious. How much is this going to cost the SMEs that are going to ask for your help?
Well, the very short answer is it's free of charge. So in that sense, there's no cost for EU SMEs using our service. But looking at it in a different way, it will require an investment of their time. So for us to be able to provide the support they need with regards to due diligence will require their input, information about the transaction that they may be considering or the specific question they have. And depending on the type of question that they have, we would require them to provide information about the transaction, which can become detailed. So there's no cost involved for them, but it will require their support.
Okay, let's just to make it easier for me to understand this, let's pretend that I am an SME. And I am curious to learn how this works or how I can get your support. Because I noticed on the website that there's a personalized support aspect to this. So how does that work, step by step?
I think the first step then is, Dimitrios already mentioned, we have a website that went live. So really the first step is to get on the EU Sanctions Helpdesk website, and they will find some short articles explaining what sanctions due diligence is in the first place, because that's already a term that's not clear to everyone from the beginning. So they will be able to familiarize themselves with the topic. Mm-hmm. There are some short videos where Dimitrios can speak to in more detail. But once they've reviewed that through the website, there's a very easy access to a helpdesk portal, which is really what you think of when you hear the word helpdesk. It's easy to sign up and then submit your question to the helpdesk. So I would say use the website to sort of define your question, and then it's really a matter of submitting the question to us, and we can start the conversation. And again, what that will look like in practice is a little bit dependent on the question. It can be a short question where they say, well, I have this product. Is my product covered under this particular sanction? So they already have a very clear understanding. Sometimes it may be a broader question, and we'll take it from there. And then one additional point is if they really have a transaction where they say, I already have this business partner, I have this product, I'm looking to do this type of transaction, we can provide support on really doing due diligence for that full transaction. And in that case, we'll require more information from them.
Got it. Just so that the listeners know, we're going to be putting the link to the help desk into the show notes, so people should check it out there. Okay, you just mentioned, like, if I have a transaction, there's a lot of proprietary and sort of maybe secret information going on in business dealings, right? Assuming that I'm the head of an SME, or I'm the lawyer for an SME, what kind of information will I be required to share with you? And is there any reason for me to be worried about my information getting out of my control?
Well, on that last point, no. So it will be submitted to a secure portal and will be accessed only by the staff of the help desk that will provide the support. On the part as to the type of information that we'll be sharing, I think the general types of requests will not involve any information that is so sensitive, but it may happen on a case-by-case basis. So I would say the typical case will require some information about their products, maybe the customs classifications linked to their product. It will require information about their business partners or potential end users that may have some commercial sensitivities for the SME, but those types of things are, of course, best for them to assess. And welcome to raise that in their request if they have particular sensitivities. But overall, I would say there's no immediate concern to get the support you need for sanctions compliance about the information you should be sharing with us.
Dimitrios, the terminology of sanctions, terms like due diligence, funds restriction, national competent authorities, and so on and so on. There's a lot of terminology, a lot of terms that are used by us in the commission, you in the help desk, in the legal profession, and in big companies with big legal in-houses. But there's an awful lot of people in SMEs that have little to no experience in that sort of legal terminology. How are you going to get it across to them what is meant by what? I mean, how do you get SMEs to understand these very important words that others just bandy about willy-nilly?
That's a great question. Actually, when we were first starting to conceptualize the website, we did research to see what's out there. So we try to get ourselves in the shoes of an SME, which, as you said, they lack resources that big companies have. And we're trying to say, okay, if you're an SME in the Netherlands, in Greece, in Ireland, and you want to find some information related to due diligence, how do you find it? Is it easy to find? And what we found was that there's a lot of information out there. It's not that we lack information, but sometimes this information is scattered all over the web. And what we try to do is to build a website that brings together different pieces of information that are useful for an SME, but also understandable and accessible. On the website, if an SME comes and visits, they will be able to find a range of publications. For example, I will mention the articles that Frederik mentioned earlier, the due diligence essentials. These are article pieces that we produce in an easy way, understandable way, and with tips, and literally it's a guidance. So I think it's for every SME. You don't have to be a lawyer to really understand. I can understand, and I'm not even a lawyer, right? Apart from the due diligence essentials articles, we also publish other content pieces that focus on lessons learned, tips, challenges. We have the new podcast series, The Compliance Corner, which aims to increase compliance understanding and awareness. And again, we have in mind that SMEs will be listening, and we want our content to be accessible and understandable. Instead of featuring only insights of sanctions experts, those we don't like. They're everywhere, right? We have policymakers discussing sanctions. We have sanctions experts, which is great. We need these insights. But what we want to do is future the perspectives of SMEs, those that have undergone the due diligence process, those who can share valuable insight with their peers. So in essence, what we want is to have content produced by SMEs for SMEs, right? Additionally, apart from the publications, we have brought together different resources. Most of them are EU resources. So SME can find these resources on our website. So the website is also an entry point for other resources that exist already out there, and we have brought them together. Last but not least, we have events that we organize but also attend. I'm going to focus on the events that we organize because those can be information sessions, but also training workshops. And again, these training workshops are targeting SMEs, and they aim to increase compliance, understanding, and awareness. Again, taking in mind that jargon language, terminology can be hard to navigate sometimes. And one last point that I would like to make is that on the website, we also have a glossary of sanctions-related terms, and there we explain what we mean with each term. So I think that will be useful for the SMEs as well.
Got it. You mentioned outreach to SMEs. I often, whenever I hear something about a EU initiative, they're usually great ideas, but the Commission or the EU generally has a communications problem in that we're not necessarily always super effective at reaching out and of actually letting the citizens know about this wonderful thing that we're doing. And I'm not being facetious at all. I mean, we do great things. It's just that we don't necessarily manage to communicate that we're doing that. So how are you going to communicate across 27 member states to a very specific group of people, SMEs, that this resource, this no-cost resource to them is available?
That's a great question. That's the usual challenge, that we face. I mean, this is a service that is for free, as Frederik mentioned earlier. So what we want is to have the service reaching the member states, reaching the SMEs in every member state. So we want to decentralize, leave the bubble, that sometimes that is called Brussels, and just go to the member states. For that, actually, our approach revolves around mobilizing like-minded EU partners. And by EU, I don't mean European institutions only, but partners across the EU who are aware of this service and that want to help SMEs comply and make their lives easy in this complex environment. So we try to mobilize partners across the EU. Starting from the EU institutions, we work to use all available channels when available. And there we value the help from Directorate General of the European Commission, the European External Action Service too. But also, we're interested in working with European Commission representations in member states. And why is that? Because they know the member states, they are working closely with partners at the national level. And we think that it's going to really add a lot to our efforts to reach the SMEs. So as our listeners can imagine, we are open to partnerships with public authorities, national authorities, compliance support organizations, chambers of commerce. If they're listening to us right now, we want to work with you, but also financial institutions from all member states. And these partnerships that we're interested in can include events, cross-promotion, trainings, and other opportunities. We are open. So what I would advise those listening to us is, if we don't reach out to them first, they can reach out to us. And how can this take place? Visit our website. There we have a dedicated section on partners. We have a dedicated form. Write to us and be sure that we will very fast get back to you to plan a meeting or arrange this partnership. And last but not least, I think it's worth mentioning that on the homepage of our website, we have a newsletter that is featured there. So those listening to us, they can subscribe. This newsletter is monthly, and there they can be sure that in their mailbox, once per month, they will know the latest from the help desk, including upcoming events, trainings, but also the latest publications that we share.
Got it. Frederik, now I'm going to ask a question that might end up being a wrong question because I'm just trying to fully understand this. So if it's off base, we'll just edit it out. Can I give you a hypothetical that I imagine an SME might find themselves in, and whether that would be a scenario appropriate for them to contact you guys? Okay, I'm an SME in one of the 27 member states, and I'm producing a widget that could be put into, let's say a drone or something like that. And I'm approached by a new partner for supplying that widget, a company from member state X. Now, the reason I'm a little worried about this is because A, I haven't ever worked with that company. B, I do know that my widget is possibly dual use. And the person on the other side of the table has a really scary Russian sounding name. So, I mean, is this something that I would come to you to help me figure out whether this is a Russian front company that's about to take my legitimate product and use it to give it to the Russian military to continue their atrocities?
Absolutely. So it's a very, very good question, and the types of questions that I think the result of also the outreach and the awareness raising that the help desk is doing, and actually everyone in this space, I think, that tries to promote sanctions compliance, is indeed to make sure that SMEs are asking those questions. And I think in your question is also a very important point that you identify that there's something with this transaction. So there's already sort of a risk assessment. So this SME is already doing part of the sanctions due diligence, which is indeed a word that maybe we should use less. But indeed, they are doing a sort of a risk assessment with regards to the transaction. That's the perfect first step. And then they can come to us for the follow-up questions, because that's typically where it becomes difficult. Okay, you have identified, hey, there's something with this transaction. I am aware of certain restrictions, but I don't know exactly how far those restrictions go, whether or not they apply, and even what steps to take now. And then also talking about resources, you may not have the staffing available to actually do it. And that's where we come in. So indeed, they can ask that question, but this is also a typical request where we'd say, well, that requires also an investment of that SME in sense of time.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to, of course, know that counterparty. We'll ask them, well, what is it that makes you concerned about this particular transaction? So we have that information. We know the sanctions legislation. We have the tools available to do investigations with regards to the counterparty, to help classify products if need be under sanctions regulations, but they know their business. So I think if those two things come together in the request and also in the conversation, we can definitely help them with this type of request.
What I like about this whole setup is that what we mentioned earlier, the personalization aspect of it, rather than it being just an FAQ or basically a self-help book, that SMEs can look at this service as being personalized to them as though an in-house counsel would be able to help them if they had the money, if they had the resources to hire that sort of in-house counsel.
That's an important point, if I may respond to that, because indeed, we are there advising them on sanctions. We're not necessarily as a law firm in their corners. We are really interpreting, okay, what does the regulation say on this point? What guidance is available? And then if certain guidance is missing, so there's also a limit to what we as help desk can, of course, offer. We're also there in the middle to say, well, this is a question you may want to speak to your national competent authority, or you may want to seek additional legal counsel if needed at a certain point. So we'll help them along the way. We'll also share a report. And if I may comment on that, you asked a good question about, well, all the jargon, for example, that is used. We will share a report following a request, which can sometimes be a little bit lengthy, but the reason for that is that we want to make sure that the recipient of our report, our findings following a request, can follow along our reasoning and will understand, okay, this is what we're looking at, because it will also help them if a next request or next transaction comes in. They're welcome to contact the help desk again, but of course it will help all of us if sort of we all move up, and they will be more comfortable next time around thinking, oh, wait a minute, I first do step 1, 2, and 3, and then I contact the help desk. This is how far I got with the transaction now.
Gentlemen, you have given me reason to be hopeful because this sounds like a really good project, a really good product that the EU has come up with to help its SMEs. SMEs, we all know, are a massive part of the economy. And when we're asking them to be on board in sanctions implementation, it's great that the EU is providing a service, providing resources to help them do that. So, Dimitrios, Frederik, thank you so much for coming to the pod and explaining all this to me today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, here's my take on this. If the internet hasn't led me astray, 99% of EU businesses are small and medium enterprises, SMEs. That means that the sanctions that we impose working depends on those myriad companies to comply with sanctions and help the EU achieve its foreign policy aims for the good of the EU's citizens. Sanctions compliance can be difficult, sometimes a very confusing task, and SMEs may not have the necessary resources in-house to make sure they're doing a good job on sanctions. Worry not, the EU is here to help. Again, the EU Sanctions Helpdesk is an essential piece of the European Union's efforts to help European operators, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, in complying with EU sanctions across the world. The heart of the help desk is the support service, which offers personalized help to companies performing sanctions due diligence checks. The help desk team also manage a website creating and hosting sanctions-related information, events, news, tips, lessons learned, and so on. All UN and autonomous EU restrictive measures, otherwise known as sanctions, are covered by the help desk. You're going to find links to lots more great information in the show notes. Check them out. Thank you for joining me today. Please like and subscribe, spread the word, and until next time, bye.